Okay, this could be my ultimate advertiser-unfriendly video. Not only would I say it's not safe for work, it's not safe for church or anywhere else either, but I think if people want to know these things, it should be available to them. So, once again, I'm in the face of losing another pile of subscribers. Here I go anyway. I'm going to talk about Isaac. I believe, after looking over a number of these passages quite carefully, that he is not Abraham's biological child. This brings a whole new meaning to the discussion between Jesus and the Jews in the book of John, where he says, you may be descended from Abraham, but you're not like Abraham. This is because Abraham gave up his own chances of descent. He's the ultimate hospitable guy. Not only mi casa es su casa, but my wife is your wife if you want her. And it happens over and over again. First, he goes to meet Pharaoh. And Sarah is so beautiful that he says, they'll kill me for you and take you into the household as a concubine. Which is true, except he says she's my sister. And possibly the origin of a rather raunchy joke. And then Pharaoh takes her. Yehovah visits a bunch of plagues upon Egypt. Pharaoh has to give her back, along with a considerable amount of livestock as compensation, and they both go home richer. After this, Abraham gets his first son, although it's by an Egyptian handmaiden. Ishmael's by Hagar, not by Sarah. So each time, Abraham illustrates this ultimate in sexual hospitality, and he does it to people who don't offer the same to him in return. He's enriched. He gets he gets progeny, he gets wealth. It's a little bit like Eyes Wide Shut, in which people engage in these god-summoning sex rituals to work their way up the ladder. Although it's something that's forbidden, of course, and the gods facilitate it to make it possible for Abraham. The first thing Yahweh tells Abraham is, leave your house. It's a reenactment of the first couple chapters of Genesis creation, where there's apparently one creation, which I think Yahweh probably took part in, Yehovah, with the rest of the Elohim. Then he went out in chapter 2 and started his own creation. So he tells Abraham the same thing. Leave your family and go to a land that I've set aside for you. And this goes a lot farther than just visiting somebody else and having him visit you, because you're friends, and Abraham is unique in this, in being friends with the gods. Yahweh, Yehovah, visits Abraham's tent and comes into his house. This is physically. And it's not something of minor importance, because Yehovah then says, I'll visit you in the future, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah reacts to this by first not saying, I'm 90 years old and I'm going to have a son. No, instead she says, I'm this old and I'm going to have pleasure now. Yehovah, I would not say, does not have to have physical contact with a woman to impregnate her. I think in the case of Eve, when she had Cain, he most likely did it immaculately. But in this case, after Isaac is born, before Isaac is born, it's said that Yehovah comes and visits her, does to her as he had promised, and then she conceives and bears a child. Wow. Okay. This is a woman who's in her 80s and still being chased by everybody from the pharaohs to kings to the gods. And even when Yehovah has prevented her from having children, and she's past menopause anyway. But the same one who's prevented her from having children says, I'll visit you and you'll have a child. This is a very Bill Clinton type statement of what's going to happen. If you're dealing with Bill Clinton and Bill Clinton is pursuing you, you got to read between the lines that something's going to happen other than just artificial impregnation. When Isaac is born, she says, God has given me laughter. Laughter being the name of Isaac. So there's a triple joke being played. First of all, Abraham laughed because God says Sarah's going to have a son. Then Sarah laughed because Yehovah said Sarah's going to have a son. Then, when Sarah had the son, she laughs because it's not Jehovah's son, even though he had sex with her, because she was already pregnant by God when Jehovah made his personal visit. You're supposed to be solemn in that when you talk about the Bible, but this is about a guy who's the conception of a son who's named Laughter, and I think we might lose sight of the fact that sometimes that these things are meant to be taken as jokes, and God has given them laughter in this case. Later on, there's an even stranger, darker form of humor, in that Isaac is to be sacrificed. Elohim tells Abraham to do this, but not in a way that would please him. Elohim says, take your only son that you love and sacrifice him. But he does not say your only begotten son, like he does in the book of John, referring to Jesus. Also, earlier on that, God said to Abraham that he would give Abraham a son by Sarah, not that Abraham would give himself the son. And it's also not said, like with other women farther down the succession line, that their wombs were closed and then a God opened them. Or with the house of Abimelech, where he wanted to take Sarah as his concubine, and God came to him in a dream and said, don't you dare do this. That afterwards, the women of the house of Abimelech had their wombs opened by Elohim because they'd had them closed by Yehovah. There are all these references to women's wombs being opened and closed, but that's not said with Sarah, and she never has any children after Isaac. So it does appear to me, after looking at all these things, that they all point in the same direction, that Isaac was divinely and uniquely conceived. Then the time comes to sacrifice him. Now, this harkens back once and again to the other guys who were conceived, as I see it, by gods, Cain and Seth. Cain gives an offering to Yehovah, but he offers plants, which are the favorite sacrificial gift for Elohim, even though Cain is Yehovah's son. So he says, here, Dad, you conceived me. Or maybe he doesn't know that Yehovah's his dad, but he offers exactly the opposite of the sacrificial offering he should give. So it's good in itself, but of course Yehovah chooses Abel's offering instead, because Yehovah likes animal offerings, sometimes burnt animal offerings. And now, here's the next test with Abraham. This is essentially a composite offering, because God says, kill your firstborn son, or kill your favorite son, but give him up as a burnt offering. So, Elohim essentially seems to be offering Yehovah a chance to do the creation all over again. We'll be family, we'll do a joint sacrificial offering. Because the burning part is what you would do if you want to please Yehovah. Sacrificing your child, is your blood sacrifice, or your plant sacrifice, is what you would do to please Elohim. Of course, Elohim says sacrifice him. Yehovah intervenes, and he stops it, and takes credit for it, and says, thank you for demonstrating all your faith to me, Abraham. Here's a ram for you to sacrifice instead, which is a purer form of the sacrifice that Yehovah likes to receive. And Yehovah has been tampering with the unbroken line of descent of Elohim from quite early on, because he's made his own line of descent, which is broken and interfered with by divine conceptions. And in the Tower of Babel incident, Yehovah is the guy who says, we got to confuse these people's tongues so that they don't remember their desire to make a name for themselves, to remember their lineage reaching unbroken by divine interference back to the time of the first people created. Now, Abraham owes all of his success to his incredible hospitality. People are really unhospitable to him, Pharaoh and the king of Gerar, Abimelech, because they want to kill him and take his wife if he doesn't say that she's his sister. And so he offers the reverse of what's offered to him. If they were ultimately hospitable, as hospitable as they could possibly be, they would say, hey, come into my kingdom, enjoy my concubines if what you want. What's in my house or in my country is all yours. They would not seek to kill him and take Sarah against her will, and have to be forced to pay all this compensation later on. But that's the way it goes. Sarah's womb is not, once it's opened, doesn't stay open apparently, unlike other women. No, it's not, and it's not strictly speaking a womb opening, like they say with the others, like Rebecca and Rachel and the wives of Abimelech. She is so hot, even when she's 89. Pharaoh wants her, the king wants her, the gods want her, and they let her have only one child, and whatever they do to allow her to have that child, it doesn't continue on. She doesn't have additional children afterwards, unlike the other women with fertility problems in the Bible that are mentioned in her immediate line of descent. So, yeah, pretty much Abraham is defined by being the ultimate in hospitality. It's a little bit like Eyes Wide Shut, where the people involved engage in sexual rituals to move themselves up the power hierarchy. So they have to make themselves and their spouses available to other people in the club. Although the means by which Sarah is made available are not quite the same as those in Eyes Wide Shut, of course. They refuse, and then when people try to take advantage of them, they profit from it. So in that way, that's another form of joke in the whole story. The joke's on the people who try to take Sarah when the gods have other plans for her.